For my learning contract, I decided to delve into the world of eating disorders. I wanted to present it through the lens of the eating disorder rather than an informative perspective. This is why I did a reverse public service announcement. A regular public service announcement is a message meant to spread to society fast. They are used to raise awareness and manage public attitudes, opinions, or even behaviors towards an issue. My public service announcement through this poster is to speak from the voice of the eating disorder to understand certain attitudes, opinions, and behaviors towards these. These messages can be instructional, inspirational, or even shocking to elicit emotion and action. This gave me the chance to research what draws people into an eating disorder, what keeps them, as well as examine the supportive culture surrounding these diseases that perpetuates their growth in our society. This is my poster. From a distance, it may look like a chaotic mess, but once we take a closer look, we can see that it is very organized chaos, such as an eating disorder. The board is separated into two sides. The left side, with Meet Anna, which explains online communities that support people with anorexia label themselves as pro-Anna. They also refer to Anna as the person or entity they are worshiping through their disorder. On the right side is Meet Mia. Just as anorexia communities, the bulimia community also worships Mia, the person or entity they are worshiping through their disorders. Throughout the poster, there are quotes from various academic sources that research these disorders, pictures from pro-Anna or Mia chat rooms or blogs, as well as self-assessment tools. There are many more forms of eating disorders, but I wanted to focus on these two for my assignment because I felt they were the most researched. The areas I will be covering are what these disorders are, how identity is formed through them, how stigma is managed, and the role of media. Meet Anna. Adler and Adler highlight a study of anorexia nervosa and bulimia through a deviance lens written by McLorg and Taub, and how their identity is formed through the disorder, as well as what stages of primary and secondary deviance looks like. Let's take a closer look at anorexia. McLorg and Traub state that in anorexia, 20 to 25% of initial body weight is lost because of starvation, or a combination including excessive exercising. McLorg and Traub suggest that the rise in percentage of people with these disorders is because of the influx of media surrounding weight. A way that I represented society's responsibility on the perpetuation of this disease is by making coupons on the left side for laxatives, mints, and a scale. Society is continually giving messages through the language of food advertisements, examples such as skinny gal wine, low-calorie gum, and low-calorie options at restaurants. McLorg and Traub touch on the confusing messaging by saying, quote, food and restaurant advertisements overall convey the pleasures of eating, whereas advertisements for other products such as fashion and diet ads reinforce the idea that fatness is undesirable. This is where bulimia comes in. Meet Mia. The bulimia community is one that participates in binging large amounts of food and purging after, and lots of times includes laxative abuse. One of the articles I researched was about a girl that recovered from bulimia. She said, quote, I wanted to feel numb. I wanted to take back power over my body. I wanted to be in control, so I ate. Then I purged. And just like that, a self-destructive cycle of bulimia began. While I was researching pro-anorexia and pro-bulimia websites, I came across a chat room which was set up for anyone to come to go get support for the bulimia lifestyle. This chat room was full of young girls, some as young as 9, looking for a Mia buddy. This would be an online buddy which would support you and encourage you in your behaviors of binging and purging. I found a chat room link which had a 12-year-old girl looking for support, which reads, do you really not gain anything from purging? I'm curious. I have chronic anxiety and depression too, by the way. How do you even make yourself sick? This thread was then flooded with other bulimics who gave her tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts. These online communities help these people with hiding their disorders from those they love, and in hindsight, allow them control over their primary deviance. Much of these disorders are rooted in a victim's desire for control. Another girl interviewed said, "It's always been clear to me how I developed an eating disorder. I learned at a young age that even if you can't control nothing else around you, you can control your own body." With quotes like these, it is clear to see how these disorders can stay in the primary deviance category for a long time, as the participants are able to manage their identity through these online chat rooms, mostly anonymous. Throughout these online chat rooms, there are pro-Ana images for people to look to for inspiration. This one says, "Push, push until your thighs don't touch." Underneath, the quote reads, "In a paper published last year, psychotherapist Tom Wooldridge describes one patient with anorexia who used pro-Ana blogging as a psychic retreat, where she could withdraw from overwhelming emotional pain. Although this girl may not have known it, her participation in these deviant online sites also was helping her self-neutralize her own deviance in her disorder. Sykes and Matza would classify her area of neutralization as both appealing to higher authorities and denial of injury. Appealing to higher authorities because the non-conventional social bond that these chat rooms represent allowed her to not feel alone. But at the same time, the peer pressure that is involved with maintaining an anorexic identity through these sites maintained her need to participate. Denial of injury, as she would not have seen that her own participation in the chat rooms also encouraged others to continue in their disorders. Sure, the online space was a place for her to have an emotional release and support, but using that as her coping mechanism further perpetuated the community and solidarity amongst the sufferers. The pro-Ana Psalm. What I found interesting about these online communities is their need to follow a formal set of religious principles that they developed for Ana and Mia. They needed to be able to say they were worshiping Ana or Mia through their starvation or purging, the draw for a higher power to be doing these acts for. Durkheim's structural functionalism would suggest that all norms, values, and laws are taught to constrain their behavior. This is how we learn what is right and what is wrong. That determining what boundaries are set allows for people to know how to function. This would make sense then to why people with anorexia and bulimia would create their own religion, as it gives them boundaries to act within. When the disorder has gone beyond something they can hide, this is when the actions move into secondary deviance. This is when people begin to adapt the identity of someone with an eating disorder. I included online self-assessments to represent it. Secondary deviance begins when the person 1. is no longer able to hide their disorder, 2. when it interferes with their ability to lead a healthy life, and 3. when they accept their new identity. In McLorb and Traub's study, they said the moment they realized that their disorder had gotten out of hand was when their regimented lifestyle got in the way of family meals, holiday gatherings, and other mundane daily things. For anorexics, this would be their starvation or exercising, and for bulimics, it would be their inability to purge when they wanted. Purges realized their dependence on the act for stress regulation. Not only did secondary deviance mean that the sufferers accepted their new identity, but it also meant that now society was welcome to judge this new identity as well. In primary deviance, the sufferers were able to manage their identity, and it did not include others. Now in secondary deviance, it meant that family members, peers, and friends were also included in this new role formation. This brought on a lot of stress for the sufferers because now they were not only managing their own guilt and shame, But now that people they cared about were in on their struggles, they felt like they were also holding their loved ones' guilt and shame about their disorder. A direct quote from McLorb and Traub's study reads, "As secondary deviants, thus endured negative consequences such as stigmatization from being labeled. As they internalized the labels anorexic or bulimic, individuals' self-concepts were significantly influenced. When others interacted with the respondents on the basis of their eating disorder, anorexic or bulimic identities were encouraged. Moreover, group members' efforts to counteract the deviant labels were then by their master status." These last two parts of the poster show what role the disorder plays in the sufferer's coping. Teresa, in Adler and Adler, says that bulimia became her companion. Once all of her social activities and relationships had dwindled because of her disorder, bulimia was still there to comfort her. Once sufferers had accepted their identity, they then can find permission to downgrade their other social roles. Throughout the poster, there are quotes from various people who explain the role their disorder played through their emotional struggles. Some of these are, quote, "A long cultural battle against pro-ana is something of a coping mechanism for the rest of us." Quote, "People log on to relieve tension and anxiety and work through the stress that they experience in dealing with their mental illness." Quote, "Okay, I've got all this stress and I've got all of this anxiety, but this is my release." The one that stood out to me the most was a blog from someone that has bulimia. Her blog is titled "Secret Diary of a Bulimic," and her main picture is taped to the back of the toilet bowl, and the note on it reads, "Who's in control now?" All of these quotes show that the need for control is a main function of these disorders, which makes sense from a Durkheim's perspective because of the need to have rules to follow to maintain their disorders. Throughout researching the complex world of anorexia and bulimia, it is clear to me that the role of deviance play is strong. We see deviance play a role through the role of identity formation, how primary and secondary deviance perpetuates this, and the role of media. My purpose of a reverse public service announcement was to show how attractive the deviant behavior of these disorders may be. Thanks for listening.